Would you debate a war?
Well, debate me. I'm allowing you to define.
No, I'm just telling him.
So what?
Some advice. Don't debate a war. It's not healthy. I want to know rationally, coherently, and justifiably an answer. Can nothing make something?
Suppose I say
There's no supposed
for anything to exist, then something has to come from nothing.
There's no such thing as suppose.
Well, if I'm taking a step forward, your point is we see something that exists. It has to come from somewhere. That somewhere is God. No? Then correct me.
Can nothing make something is the same question I've asked. So if you were to ask me, I will tell you no.
Okay.
Because nothing, I'm sure you know there are several levels of nothing. There are 9 levels of nothing.
Okay.
If I give you some presents and you open the box and there's nothing in there, you say there's no present. But I gave you a box and the box is not empty. It's got air in it.
Okay.
Space in it.
Okay.
Molecules, gravity, quantum fluctuations, right? It's not nothing. So nothing has different levels. The nothing that I'm talking about is nothing that it has no possibility of giving rise to anything, something.
So
absolute nothingness.
Can I sum up your point of view by saying that anything that exists has to come from something or somewhere?
You again jumping to.
Well, I'm trying to rephrase what you said.
No. Why are you trying to formulate and think? Oh, what is the argument leading towards? Just let's understand this simple thing first of all. Can nothing give rise to something? Can nothing make something? And the nothing I'm defining to you now is the nothing that is absence of everything, and that everything includes space, time, quantum fluctuations, and possibilities. Absolutely nothing.
I won't lie, you have stumped me with quantum fluctuations because I'm not sure I understand that to the level that you do. But if I'm still trying to understand.
Was my statement, that question, very difficult to understand?
Well, all right. You're asking the question, can nothing give rise to something?
Yeah.
And your answer is no.
Yeah, what is your answer?
In which case, I think an equivalent statement is something cannot come from nothing.
No, that's my answer. But I want to know your answer.
You're saying.
I want to know your answer, not mine.
Well, that depends on exactly what it is that you're saying. But are you saying that something cannot come from nothing?
What's your name?
Jacob.
I am Mansur, Jacob.
Biblical, by the way.
Jacob, I am Mansur. Pleasure speaking to you.
And you.
I want to know from your perspective and whether we need a paradigm shift. Remember what I said?
All
whether
right,
we need a paradigm shift.
My perspective is yes. Because even if you believe in a God as the absolute core basis of truth that gives rise to everything, then you believe in a God that exists. And if that God exists, then that God is something. And that something must then come from nothing. And it's not my argument, it's a very common one. It's an argument of infinite regression. If the universe was given rise to by God, then where does God come from? Oh, God came from nothing, so nothing can give rise to something. So I think the difference between our perspectives is that you believe God is the truth, and as an atheist, I suppose I believe that what we see is the truth.
Okay. So you've made several assumptive errors there, errors coming from assumption.
Okay.
We, as Muslim or theists in general, we do not believe God came from something.
Okay.
Or from nothing.
You believe that God is?
I will tell you. So your assumption that God came from nothing, and then you answer that question, yes, nothing can make something, was mistaken.
But why is that? So if you're allowed to make the assumption that God just is, and there was nothing previously,
look, remember,
why am I not allowed to make the assumption that the universe just is, and there was nothing previously?
Firstly, I asked you a question: can something come from nothing?
Mm-hmm.
And you should justify that. Likewise, I should be able to justify my statement too. So I would like to ask you once again, from your own perspective, in your own critical, rational thinking. Mm-hmm. Can nothing make something? And the nothing that I have described already.
Yes. I think the way that you phrase the question, the answer can only be yes.
So how can nothing make something? Can you just show us some justification?
Oh, God, I absolutely no idea. But I don't think I've got any less of an idea than the theist who says that God just exists. And
remember, you now an atheist, if you are one, Jacob, you are on the defense to justify your position, not me.
Well, I'm on the defence because you repeatedly asked me quite.
I have made you into defence, and I would like to hear a coherent, cogent, rational explanation, a justification of your statement that yes, something can come from nothing. Go ahead.
Okay, the argument is, as I've laid previously, my position is no different from yours. If I try to say that everything that we see exists and just does, I don't think I'm making a very different argument from you saying that God exists and just does. We both face the same issue. I'm trying to explain how the universe exists apropos of nothing, which I can't, and you're trying to explain how God exists apropos of nothing, which you can't. But I don't think we're too different on that page. I think regardless of whether you believe in a God or not, the reliance on the point of something has to come from somewhere, that doesn't solve either of our issues. I can't explain how this came from nowhere, and I don't think that you can explain how God came from nowhere.
Remember,
and as I say, it's a very old point.
Remember, Jacob, your failure to justify should not be imposed on me, as like I would right? So I want you, on your own merit, on your own critical thinking, justify the assertion that you've just made, or you can take it back and say, actually, no. I give you either options.
Let me answer it. So, whatever you would say about your belief for God existing,
you don't even know what I'm going to say.
I don't know.
So
but whatever you
irrelevant.
say, I will copy and paste.
No, it's irrelevant. I would like to know,
and I'll replace
you as a critical thinking individual, I would like to hear some justification.
I've accepted that I can't, but the point that I'm
but
trying to make
is... But you made an assertion. You've made an assertion you're unable to justify. So you've made a faith-based claim.
I don't know where the universe.
So you made a claim based on faith. So it's a blind faith.
A claim based on faith?
Yeah, it's a blind faith, isn't it? You can't justify it.
No. I've made a claim of ignorance. I've made a claim that I don't know where all this comes from.
Yeah, you might be a flying spaghetti monster, right?
It might be. Oh, far as I know, it might be.
And you don't even know. That's the difference between you and me as a theist, as a Muslim.
No. You're saying that your answer to the question, can nothing give rise to something, is no.
Based on the definition of nothing.
Just the way I phrase that question, I've tried to use
based on the definition of nothing.
Sure.
The answer has to be no.
The answer has to be
if
no.
you
Fine.
don't say
then
no and say yes, then we have to agree that you are being unreasonable.
Then that is logically equivalent. To saying that something must arise from something. Something must arise from not nothing. Right?
Something must come from something.
Something must come from something. Your God exists.
No. Let's take.
No. Your God exists. That's an easy one. That's a yes or no.
Jacob. Let's go back to nothing and something.
No, come on. Your God exists.
Always
exists. Your
exists.
God is something.
Yeah, he always existed.
So where did your God come from?
Always existed. There's no question of coming from.
And then this is where I'm trying to build bridges. Your God always existed. My universe always existed.
Fine.
And it doesn't need a God.
Fine.
And your God doesn't need a higher God.
Let's now come to an understanding of a reasonable one. So your universe, by definition of nothing that we explain, your universe has to have existed always. There could have been a time where it was absolutely nothing to begin with.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So do you believe the universe existed always?
I believe that the conditions for the universe to arise existed always, yes. So I believe in a Big Bang, and then it comes down to what you consider to be a universe. But for the purposes of your question, yes, I believe the universe.
Do you believe the universe existed 17 billion years ago?
Yes, but in some context.
In what context?
Okay, so
when did time begin?
About 17 billion years ago.
No.
Sorry, about 13.7 billion years ago. But to a quantum physicist, there was something prior to the Big Bang which existed, which allowed the conditions for the Big Bang to. But I don't understand this stuff well enough.
Okay.
But I'm saying, regardless, even if you
something existed.
Something existed.
Okay.
Sure.
So now we are on a common ground. Something has to always be in existence to explain us, our existence. You cannot have a time, in inverted quotes, in the past where there was absolute nothingness. Because from absolute nothingness, you will get absolute nothingness. There has to be always something. Either it's the universe or its conditions or whatever it was. Always something.
If by nothingness you mean like an absence of matter.
Absence of everything.
What? An absence of
everything.
So an absence of matter is different from an absence of laws of physics.
No, absence of everything includes laws of physics.
Then I'm not well educated enough to answer that question. Is the honest answer?
No. The answer is if there is such a thing called nothing, which doesn't have anything. not even laws and possibilities,
Yeah.
then from that nothing, you will get nothing. Something cannot come from it. That is a reasonable, logical, rational position to take. And it's not rocket science, it's common sense. Because we've defined what nothing is.
Okay, I believe that if there is such thing as a universal set of laws of physics, they existed prior to the Big Bang. I think that's the best way I can answer your question. Yeah. I've also got somewhere to be in about an hour, but it was lovely to chat to you.
Yeah. If we had time,
I hope the YouTube videos get a lot of views.
If we had time, Jacob, we would have shown you. We would have shown you how the position we have is justifiable. But of course, you have to go. Okay. Pleasure speaking to you.
And to you.
And if you ever come across again, we can continue this talk.
I'm sure.
Yeah?
Nice
Take care.
Just to summarize, what was the point that he was slipping on and he kept on going back to you to try and get you to answer a question?
Yes, this is something that I think we should take note and learn from. Atheists for the last few decades have been trying to put the Muslims or theists in general on defense.
Yeah.
Like, prove the existence of God. Time has changed. We've turned the table around. We are now putting them on the defense to justify their atheistic position, and you will find that they are now struggling. They're struggling to justify their own position. Like, how many times did I have to tell him what nothing is? Again and again. And still he thinks maybe this nothing can give rise to something. When common sense tells us, if you have such a concept, you will get nothing out of it. So that is why Professor Lawrence Krauss, when he wrote a book called The Universe from Nothing, it was a book of deception. Do you know why it's a book of deception? Because many of his followers thought, now we have a reason to believe the universe came from nothing. Because it says on the title, the universe came from nothing. Yeah? But in the book, he explains it, even though a little, what he means by nothing. His nothing is something. There's quantum fluctuations, gravity, and so on and so forth. And so gravitational fields and other things like that. So it's not nothing, it's something. They have to deceive. In fact, I actually asked him when I went for a book signing. I asked him deliberately. I mean, I had to pay for this book to ask him that question, right? I would have bought it anyway, just to see what he's saying. Why are you deceiving? He said, I have explained my nothing in the book. So I said, what do we call it nothing then? So they want to differentiate between a philosophical nothing and a scientific nothing. That is the deception. That is the trick. So now, as you see, the shift that he has is trying to make like, oh, you have the same problem. Look at how he's trying to, and then you have to defend it. There was nothing to begin with, and then God came and so on. I had to correct him a few times again. We don't believe God came from nothing. God was always there. So which makes sense? God was always there, or the universe which was always there or not? Because he knows the universe wasn't always there. I asked him a question about 17 billion years ago, 18 billion years ago. He knows there is no such thing as a 17 billion years ago, because time itself began much later. Yeah? 16.3 billion years or something, 8.
Stay away from people.
So time had a beginning, so you can't say a time beforehand because it's not meaningful. So then he has his own perception of the reality, saying there's conditions, the physical laws, when there is no physics to begin with, for this universe that gave rise to this universe. That would have been an interesting talk when we could have established then whatever you consider that to have been there, present, has to be always there. Because if it wasn't always there, same problem again. Nothing cannot make something. So if you now put some reason and critical thinking in place, and you will see that whatever was always there to give rise to this something like our universe, this transformation to happen, it cannot happen unless the thing that was there is self-aware, conscious, has a will, possesses a will, an intent, and has knowledge and power or energy. If these conditions are absent, this universe will not be transformed into what it is now. It's impossible, rational. And that is the discussion we are having week after week in Speaker's Corner, and yet our atheist friends are not learning. So we would like to invite our atheist friends to be people of critical thinking. We are asking you to be people of critical thinking. Don't think you are someone that you're telling Muslims to be critical thinking. Islam is the one that developed the whole scientific methodology and gave you the Renaissance in Europe. I'm not just making a claim, go and study and find out. If it wasn't for Islam, you'd be in Dark Ages.